The air in the High Council chamber didn't just shift. It shattered. 1 second, the gravity plating hummed at a standard 1G. The next, the artificial atmosphere screamed as the pressure dropped. Captain Sarah Vance didn't enter the room. She detonated into it. Debris from the blast doors turned into shrapnel, pinging harmlessly off her kinetic shielding as she slid across the polished obsidian floor. Dual rail pistols hummed with lethal charge. She wasn't just a soldier. She was an apex predator in an ecosystem that had forgotten fear. Across the chaotic amphitheater, her eyes locked with Elena's. There was no fear there, only the sharp, electric calculation of a survivor. The connection snapped taut. A tether of shared blood and shared wars cutting through the panic of the alien dignitaries. They were the only static points in a world spinning violently out of control. Sarah fired. The blue streak of plasma missed a fleeing diplomat by inches, designed to herd, not kill. She grinned, sharp and dangerous. Peace talks are just the final countdown. 20 minutes earlier, the mood had been deceptively serene. Elena Vance stood alone in the center of the Galactic Council, a solitary figure in a flight suit that looked hopelessly underarmored compared to the gilded battleplate of the Ethalgard Dominion. High Archon X leaned forward from his elevated dais, for eyes blinking in amusement. To him, humanity was a rounding error, a fleeting curiosity that had stumbled out of its gravity well too early. "You come before us?" Xylo boomed, voice amplified by the chamber acoustics, gesturing to the massive guards flanking the room. Towering Terran Marines, affectionately called space orcs for their green skin and protruding tusks. "My legions wear the extracted cores of neutron stars. You wear cotton. It is an insult to the Dominion." Elena didn't flinch. She adjusted her glasses, movement deliberate and precise. She wasn't looking at Solos. She was studying the structural supports, the ventilation grid, the electromagnetic flow of the station. To the Council, she looked small. But arrogance creates fatal blind spots. "We prefer efficiency over aesthetics, Archon," Elena said, voice calm but carrying effortlessly. "And as for the armor, we find it slows us down." A guttural laugh echoed from the gallery. Warlord Crunk stepped down from the podium, floor vibrating with each step. A wall of muscle and scarred metal, he embodied raw force. "You speak of efficiency, little thing?" Crunk sneered, raising a fist the size of an engine block. "I could snap you like a dried twig. This is the reality of the universe. Strength rules." Elena looked up, expression shifting from polite interest to cold analysis. She tapped a rhythmic pattern on her thigh, a signal unnoticed except by the sensors woven into the station. "True strength is not always visible or physical," she murmured. Crunk roared and swung, a blow meant to liquidate her. Elena didn't dodge. She stepped inside his guard, placing a single gloved hand on the kinetic regulator of his breastplate. Tactical genius disguised as improvisation. With a flick of her wrist, she inverted the polarity of his shield generator. The reaction was instantaneous. The energy meant to protect Crunk turned inward. The warlord folded, bisected not by a blade, but by the gravitational shear of his own armor collapsing into a microsingularity before snapping back. He fell like a collapsing building, the thundering echo filling the silent, shocked chamber. Elena stepped over him, dusting off her hands. "That is the thing about sci-fi tech," she announced, voice hard as diamond. "You rely on it so much you forget how to fight without it. This is HFY humanity. We don't subjugate, we ignite." A hologram flickered behind her, revealing thousands of distinct heat signatures decloaking amidst the station's orbital debris. The Terran spirit wasn't about fighting fair. It was about winning before the enemy knew the game had started. The flashback evaporated in the heat of a plasma discharge. Sarah came to a halt beside her sister, kinetic energy dissipating into a shockwave that rattled the teeth of the remaining dignitaries. Back to back, the Vance sisters became a singular entity, a whirlwind of calculated violence amidst the disorganized Galactic Council. "You took your time," Elena said, voice steady despite the chaos. She didn't look at Sarah. She didn't need to. She was tracking the electromagnetic spikes of the Dominion guards, the so-called space orcs regrouping at the heavy blast doors. "Traffic was murder near the nebula," Sarah replied, triggering the cooling vents on her rail pistols. A hiss of steam obscured them for a heartbeat, a phantom cloud in the center of the kill box. "Plus, I had to wait for the signal. You know, I love a dramatic entrance." High Archon Zyos had retreated to the upper tier, trembling behind a shimmering energy barrier. Arrogance replaced by the primal terror of no longer being at the top. "Seize them," Xylo screeched. A dozen armored behemoths charged, floor buckling under their tonnage. Engines of war designed to crush resistance. But Sarah was fighting a war of physics. She didn't aim for the guards. She targeted the glowing nodes of the environmental scrubbers. Creativity often outmaneuvers raw power. Duck, Sarah said. Elena dropped instantly. Plasma struck the regulators, not an explosion, but a reversal. The amphitheater's localized gravity hiccuped and inverted. The charging guards, reliant on their mag boots, became victims of their own inertia, flailing into the ceiling with bending metal. Sarah and Elena, wearing standard Terran mag coils, remained firmly planted. Gravity is a harsh mistress, Sarah noted, tapping a command into her wrist gauntlet. She linked the station's PA system to her comms. Attention, Dominion forces. This is Captain Vance of the Terran United Front. The fleet on your sensors is locking on to your life support. Power down before we turn this station into a very expensive tomb. The hologram behind Elena flared brighter, showing human dreadnoughts decloaking fully. Jagged, ugly, built for survival, not grace. The metal embodiment of the Terran spirit. Stubborn, unbreakable, terrifyingly ingenious. Silos looked from the floating, unconscious bodies of his elite guard to the two small humans standing amidst the wreckage. Silence followed, heavy with the sudden, crushing weight of realization. 7 millennia of perfected armor and energy shields versus 2 centuries of human ingenuity. I yield, Xylo whispered, fight drained. As gravity normalized and his guards dropped to the floor with a sickening crunch, Elena stepped forward, heels clicking sharply on the obsidian. She looked up at the Archon, eyes reflecting the cold light of the nebula. Wise choice, she said. She reached out, took Sarah's hand, a brief squeeze conveying more than words ever could. The relief of survival, the thrill of victory, the unbreakable iron of their bond. The Dominion leadership knelt, surrendering unconditionally to a species they had mocked just an hour prior. Sarah checked her weapons, surveying the devastation caused not by brute force, but by leverage, timing, and complete disregard for the rules. It turns out being a Deathworlder isn't about being the strongest in the room, Sarah murmured to her sister as they turned, the terrified gaze of the galaxy burning into their backs. It's about being the one crazy enough to flip the board. Exactly, Elena said, adjusting her glasses. We don't just survive the game, Sarah. We win it. Please follow my channel for more videos. One click from you can change my life.